WWE just pulled off the most disrespectful blindside attack in recent memory, and if you're not absolutely furious about what happened to Seth Rollins last night, then you clearly don't understand the politics and backstage manipulation that's been brewing for months. CM Punk, the same man who walked out on this company, sued them, and spent years trashing WWE publicly, somehow managed to orchestrate the most cowardly ambush on Monday Night Raw that left Seth Rollins bloodied and humiliated. But here's the part that will make your blood boil: WWE management knew this was coming. They allowed Punk to lurk in the shadows like some kind of predator, waiting for the perfect moment to strike at Rollins when he was completely defenseless. And the timing? It wasn't coincidental, it was calculated, methodical, and designed to send a message to every wrestler in that locker room about who really runs the show now. But wait, it gets worse. Because while Punk was busy playing his little mind games, AJ Lee made her shocking return to WWE after nearly a decade away from the company. The woman who once called WWE's treatment of women embarrassing suddenly reappears on the same night her real-life husband decides to assault one of WWE's top stars? The whole thing reeks of backstage politics and preferential treatment that should have every WWE fan questioning the integrity of this company. Let's break down exactly what happened and why this represents everything wrong with modern WWE. Seth Rollins was in the middle of cutting what many are calling one of his career-defining promos about the state of professional wrestling. He was speaking truth to power, calling out the corporate machine, and connecting with the audience on a level we rarely see anymore. Rollins was being real. He was being authentic. He was giving fans the kind of raw, unfiltered emotion that made us fall in love with wrestling in the first place. But apparently, that kind of honesty makes WWE management uncomfortable, because they couldn't let him finish his thought process before orchestrating this ambush. CM Punk emerged from the crowd, not through the entrance ramp like a respectable competitor, but slithering through the audience like a snake. He positioned himself perfectly behind Rollins, who was completely focused on delivering his message to the WWE Universe. The attack wasn't announced, it wasn't part of any storyline build-up, and it certainly wasn't a fair fight. Punk struck with a steel chair, not once, not twice, but repeatedly, targeting Rollins' back and shoulders with the kind of vicious intent that crossed the line from professional wrestling into personal vendetta territory. The sound of metal against flesh echoed through the arena as Rollins crumpled to the mat, completely blindsided by someone he had no reason to expect. But here's what really exposes the corruption in this situation: the referees were nowhere to be found. Security took their sweet time responding, and WWE officials seemed more interested in getting camera angles than actually protecting their performer. It's almost as if they wanted this to happen, as if they orchestrated this attack to serve their own narrative purposes. Meanwhile, as Rollins lay writhing in pain, the cameras cut to the entrance ramp where AJ Lee appeared for the first time since 2015. Her timing wasn't accidental, it was perfectly coordinated to maximize the shock value and deflect attention from what was essentially an unprovoked assault on one of WWE's hardest-working performers. AJ Lee's return should have been a celebration. She's a trailblazer who helped revolutionize women's wrestling during her original run. But instead of getting her moment in the spotlight, her comeback is forever tainted by being associated with her husband's cowardly attack. She's been reduced to a mere accessory in CM Punk's revenge fantasy against WWE. And let's talk about that revenge fantasy for a moment. CM Punk left WWE in 2014 under controversial circumstances, burning bridges and filing lawsuits. He spent years in interviews and podcasts trashing the company, its management, and its performers. He claimed he was done with professional wrestling forever and pursued other ventures. But now, suddenly, he's back. And his first act isn't to apologize for his past behavior or attempt to make amends with the wrestlers he badmouthed. Instead, he immediately targets Seth Rollins, a man who has been nothing but professional and who has carried WWE through some of its most challenging periods. Seth Rollins is everything CM Punk pretends to be. He's a locker room leader, a main event performer, and someone who has never wavered in his commitment to WWE even during difficult times. Rollins has been the face of Monday Night Raw for years, working through injuries, dealing with creative challenges, and always putting the company first. So why target him? Because Punk knows that attacking Rollins sends a message to everyone in that locker room: if WWE's Golden Boy isn't safe from backstage politics and personal vendettas, then nobody is. It's intimidation tactics at their finest, designed to establish Punk's position in the hierarchy without having to earn it through actual competition. The attack lasted several minutes, with Punk methodically dismantling Rollins while security conveniently remained absent. He used the steel chair, the announce table, and even the ring steps as weapons. This wasn't wrestling, it was a public beating designed to humiliate and demoralize one of WWE's top performers. And where was Triple H during all of this? Where was the supposed new leadership that promised to treat talent with respect and dignity? They were nowhere to be found while their world heavyweight champion was being assaulted by someone who shouldn't even be allowed in the building. The medical team eventually arrived to tend to Rollins, but the damage was already done, both physical and psychological. Punk had made his statement, established his dominance, and reminded everyone that the rules apparently don't apply to him. Meanwhile, AJ Lee stood at the top of the ramp, watching the carnage unfold without showing any emotion or concern for the man being brutalized below. This whole situation raises serious questions about WWE's priorities and values. Are they more interested in cheap shock value and social media buzz than protecting their performers? Are they willing to compromise the safety and dignity of their roster to appease a returning star who brings controversy and drama? The fact that CM Punk was able to orchestrate this attack suggests he has significant backstage influence and protection from management. Someone had to approve his presence in the building. Someone had to coordinate the timing with AJ Lee's return. Someone had to ensure that security and officials would be conveniently absent during the assault. This level of coordination doesn't happen by accident. It requires planning, approval, and resources that only come from the highest levels of WWE management. Which means they're complicit in what happened to Seth Rollins, and they're sending a dangerous message about what behavior is acceptable in their company. But the most infuriating part of this entire situation is how it undermines everything WWE claims to stand for. They talk about respect, professionalism, and fair competition, but then they allow personal vendettas and backstage politics to play out in the most public and humiliating way possible. Seth Rollins deserved better than this. The WWE Universe deserved better than this. And professional wrestling as an art form deserved better than this cheap, exploitative angle that prioritizes shock value over storytelling integrity. The message being sent is clear: if you're not part of the inner circle, if you don't have the right connections or the right last name, then you're expendable. Your safety, your dignity, and your career can be sacrificed at any moment to serve someone else's agenda. This is exactly the kind of behind-the-scenes manipulation and favoritism that drove fans away from WWE in the first place. It's the same old boys club mentality wrapped up in a new package, designed to make us think things have changed when the reality is that the power structure remains exactly the same. CM Punk's return should have been handled with class and professionalism. Instead, it's been marked by cowardice, violence, and disrespect for everyone who has been keeping WWE alive during his absence. AJ Lee's comeback should have been a moment of triumph and celebration. Instead, it's been overshadowed by her association with this unprovoked attack. The wrestling world is watching, and WWE's response to this situation will determine whether they're truly committed to the values they claim to represent, or if they're just another corporate entity willing to sacrifice integrity for short-term gain and social media attention. What happened to Seth Rollins was wrong. The way it was orchestrated was wrong. And the message it sends about WWE's priorities is absolutely devastating for anyone who still believes in the principles that make professional wrestling special. The question now is whether WWE will hold CM Punk accountable for his actions, or if they'll continue to enable this kind of behavior because it generates controversy and drives engagement. Based on their track record, I think we all know which path they're likely to choose. But as fans, we have the power to demand better. We have the power to reject this kind of exploitative, manipulative content and insist on wrestling that respects both the performers and the audience. The choice is ours, and the time to make it is now.